Hey guys, Earl here at Sumo Bully Kennels. Happy Saturday, back with the Breeder Series. We got a special episode for you guys today. We drove all the way to Ohio to meet Mr. Cade with the Eternals. With no further ado, Mr. Cade. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks. Thanks for coming all the way out here. I don't know whether to look at the camera, look at you.
Nah, that's okay.
I think I'm gonna look at you most of the time. They don't really need to see my face anyway. So
yeah, no one's interested in us. So starting our program and getting into dog breeding, went down the rabbit hole, right? Started looking at dogs and breeders, and I ran across your page and I saw Smash, and I was like, wow, look at this dog, amazing looking dog, right? So I was like, I want to see this dog.
sure.
And for us, of course, being new, we don't know anybody, we don't know the etiquette of reaching out. And I want to say thank you for being very gracious with your time, having those geek out conversations on the phone about dogs. So go ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for coming out, taking the time to do this and see all the dogs. We just got a chance to see them all, so I hope Smash and none of the other ones disappointed.
Oh, beautiful, amazing dogs over here.
But yeah, that's recently. I think that's how most people have been finding our kennels through Smash. Not one of the ones we started with, but definitely brought a lot more attention to the kennel this year. So happy with that. I love Smash, and yeah. Other than that, we're super happy to have you, and definitely appreciate you guys taking all the time to come over here. They were driving probably a good 8 hours today, if not more.
Yeah, we had to stop at the superchargers.
Left at about 7:30 Eastern time, I'm guessing, or 7:30 Central.
Central, and I forgot that you guys were Eastern. So I'm just like, they're going to be like, nope, we're done. We haven't had time for you today.
That's true. They drove 8 hours. We thought about turning them away, but we let them stay.
See?
So, but no, we appreciate what you guys are doing. Definitely, I mean, from the beginning. I don't know if I knew this, not really until after I got my first dog, but just the importance of seeing all the dogs either that I want to use, that I'm ever going to use in my breeding program, the house I've stud, or if it's puppies, to go and see both of the parents in person so you can see how they move, you can see the temperaments, you can see the health, let alone just the quality, because you never, seeing them in person is worth about 1,000 or 2,000 pictures.
Well, I'm glad you said that because we made that mistake of not looking at a puppy first, just being so excited to get going and looking at the bloodlines, the parents, the pictures. That it's very important to see the actual dog and the puppy or dog that you're going to get. We learned that lesson the hard way, and unfortunately, it is what it is, as they say. I know what got us here, so I'm kind of curious. How did you get into breeding?
That's a good question. I think it depends if we're talking about dog breeding or breeding in general. I was just catching up with one of my friends this week, and I was recounting that I started my days breeding, just like you were talking about, Mantis with your son. I started breeding hamsters when I was probably 6, I think. My grandma got my brother and I a hamster. The first one died. My brother wasn't interested anymore, so I got another one, and I couldn't have just one. You got to get 2. So I started breeding from a young age.
2 comes 4.
2 comes, yeah, first litter, I don't even know if they call them litters. The first time it was probably 12, I think. Which is really interesting. No one in my family bred. I grew up on a farm, so that kind of facilitated a lot of the love for animals. But it was a grain farm, so no one in my family bred animals at all. We had a number of them. We did 4-H, those type of things. But I just, for some reason, decided when I was 6, I got a book from the library. So that's how I learned about gestation, how to mate them, and everything on my own, about 6 or 7 years old.
So you're a natural breeder then.
Something like that.
That's pretty cool.
A passion that was somehow innate. So I tried to sell the first one in the local pet store. I think they gave me about 25 cents credit, in-store credit. So I bought a new automatic water bottle for the hamsters that sits on the side of the cages. And then I talked to my mom, like, we need to drive over here. It's like 20 or 30 minutes away. They're going to give me 50 cents a hamster, but in actual cash. So then I started breeding. I got another female hamster, started breeding them. And fast forward a while, because probably what most jump-started my love for this breed of dogs and then breeding dogs was actually breeding goats. Again, being on a farm. Started doing 4-H once I was 8 years old. And my mom and my sister each got a goat to breed, and so I got one. I had saved up, whatever, $300 or something like that. bought my first one, but then it really expanded to there till I had about 30, probably 30 goats at one point in time. Yeah, that's how I sold them when I went to college, but that's how I paid for my first year of college was the goats. I was showing the national show down in Kentucky, Indiana, the state fairs, everywhere.
So let me ask you: do you stack the goats too?
You do. You will laugh.
No
I should pull up a picture for you to see. I'll have Aziza pulling up to show Audrey because it was going viral around all the bully breeders. Thought there were these jacked goats. There was this brown one that it would technically be called red. It's a boar goat. Typically white with red head, but they can have fully red bodies. It's a dark brown color. I guess we would call it chocolate in the bully world. Here's Majesty. She's joining the interview with her tail. So we'll show you her later, but she's pregnant right now. She's a little bit clingy. But yeah, the goats, you stack them the same way, and that's really, I think, what primed my love for the bullies because it's the same. They're originally a type of meat goat, so you breed for really big bone, powerful chest, a certain type of head shape that you're going for, large, powerful features, same level top line, rear angulation, thick rear, a lot of similarities. So I'll show you some pictures later on. Yeah. But for the viewers, you can look up boar goats. And there was one I saw a lot of bully breeders posting. It made me laugh. Talking about this, I think they said this jacked goat that people were showing. So
it's an XL bully goat.
Yeah. So as we were talking about earlier, we were living more in the city, and I was like, oh, I can't have goats again because I liked showing them. I liked going to the shows, but I think it's I think when I was real young, I liked to care for animals, so I had the hamsters and all the different things. But then it's like this creative element of like you want to create something that doesn't exist yet. I think that's what drives most of us breeders is we have this picture of something that just maybe there's one or two dogs that look like that, but there's normally just not quite the dog that epitomizes what we're going for, and that's what drives us and pushes us forward. So I think from a young age through the hamsters with the goats. And I did pretty well, pretty much did more. My parents were the best. They were super supportive, but as far as kidding, it's not called whelping, it's called kidding the goats, doing that, pulling them out, making sure they're alive. I did all of that, and I think I learned how to do AIs, which really is what we would call TCIS. It was transcervical. When I was probably 11, I paid someone over, a professional to come over, and I was just out in the barn by myself. My parents had built a new barn, so it was super supportive and facilitating like that, but it was just me with this random guy learning how to get through the different rings of the cervix and the goats and how to artificially inseminate. So that was when I was a teenager or a preteen. So just all of the different facets really started at a young age.
Huh. Very interesting. Well, that's probably why we connected, because I grew up on a farm too, except that we bred game fowl.
Yes, that's right. You were telling me that.
Fighting roosters, very big commodity in the Philippines. It's probably $1 billion industry over there.
Oh, wow. Do they export or just is all domestic?
All for consumption. So fighting roosters, they fight to the death, and the matches are about a minute or less. Oh, wow. It's 2 buckles. Pop, pop. And they use Philippine gaff knife, which is about 3 inches long, like a jungle bolo. And I don't know if you've ever seen a rooster fight where they kick each other.
Yeah.
It's 2.
Sure. Do you use their spurs like that? Or?
Yeah, but they put that blade on, and it's 2 buckles. And then you see, it won't get too graphic, but it's very fast. And so they can fight as early as 8 months old. They call them stags at 8 months. 10 months, they call them bull stags. So if you have a rooster that's 2 years old, he's probably got at least 2-3 wins. Because if you don't win, you don't go to the next level.
Oh, wow. Survival of the...
Yeah. But it is the science behind it back at home to feed the veterinary care. These things are treated better than people. They're basically prize fighters, and a lot of money is betted per match.
Oh, wow.
So there's a confirmation, yes, how the rooster looks.
Sure.
However, it's performance-based. So, because obviously you only get one time to perform, or you don't make it.
Wow.
And millions are bet on this thing, and you have 30 seconds that you see literally millions go up in the air.
Wow, that is
30-second match. So
that was
a minute.
That's crazy.
So I grew up in that environment of, it's super meticulous and super detailed and mapped out the bloodlines.
I bet.
So you have your inbreeding, your line breeds, your outcrosses.
Yeah.
So understanding that at an early age and seeing where the magic happens of keeping the blood pure, okay? It's like you inbreed to keep the blood pure, but then you take to an outcross to produce something else that you're going to use. So
sure, which I'm guessing would introduce some type of hybrid vigor, especially into the performance line.
For performance, yes. And so you lock in those traits when you're inbreeding. And sometimes when you have like your heavily inbred fowl, you're not using that in the ring. You're using that for breeding material. Yep. Yeah. So anyhow,
I was talking that rabbit hole. Definitely. But yeah, I can relate to that same thing again. Not to, I know this is a podcast about bullies, but go look up the poor goats. Y'all will like it.
I gotta see what they look like.
If not, I'll post with my first like champion win. I'll post it. That was my first. He went on to be ennobled, which is like our version of a champion or a grand champion. He would have probably been a grand champion in dog standards. I'll post that. I look about maybe 12 years old, so you guys can't make fun of me. But yeah, I learned a lot about that. I came in it's different in dogs. I've learned it's different really in every species, what that balance is between line breeding and potentially inbreeding and outcross. I mean, horses, you don't really hardly inbreed at all. I mean, an inbred horse, I think, is one that has the same ancestors show up in a someone's going to have to correct me on this, but something like 4-generation pedigree. Whereas with dogs, it's something like 2-generation pedigree. It's like inbreeding, half brother, half sister. Some people would consider that inbreeding, and some people would probably level 2 inbreeding is the best way to compare it. But that was the main jump, was jumping into the dogs, knowing that I wanted to line breed because I saw the importance of that in the goats. I was just, there were lots of adults spending, they made 6 figures a year, spending 6 figures a year, and I started with my $300 goat, then I turned to $600, and then moved into more of the full bloods, which were, whatever. I was barely piecing together $1,000 at a time versus the adults. But I studied all the big ranches in Texas and how they put pedigrees together, and there were 2 big ones at that time. And one in particular, they just line bred every single goat that you saw in their yard was, I think our pedigrees normally go back to 6 generations. So this main buck that they had, a male goat, would show up at least 5 times in every goat that they had. And so I just saw the consistency there, able to produce with that and the quality. Versus the other big ranch, they were also like top of the line, but they just didn't really do very tight line breeding. And I would see the differences of that if I tried to bring that blood into my yard. Normally a couple generations removed because I couldn't afford the good stuff. But I would see the differences in how they produced based on how tight that blood was. So yeah, I came into the dogs looking for people that were doing very intentional line breedings.
So you got into the dogs initially to breed or as a pet?
Initially to breed, just because it's such a passion of mine. I found it more, I guess probably right at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone had their weird pandemic hobby. And so the same as you went all the way down the rabbit hole and already knew how to evaluate and piece together pets and find all that information on the internet, which is what I used to do when I was a preteen on the dial-up internet. I would have every single large, my parents would get a kick out of it, every single well-known goat. I would go to shows and have their 5 or 6 generation pet memorized. So I did the same thing with the dogs, even though I didn't have any. My neighbor had an American Bully. He was getting ready to breed, and I love genetics. So I'm like, well, if you breed this with this, he's like, yeah, we might get this color, we might get a try. He didn't have tries, and I was like, well, I know how to figure that out. I Googled a couple simple genetic things. Yeah. We didn't have tricolored goats, so I looked what's recessive, what's dominant. Is this a simple trait? Is this a compound trait? And so I went to him later. I was like, hey, you're going to have this percentage of lilacs, this percentage of black. You're not going to have any tries. He's like, okay, well, we'll see. But I just loved, my mom was a science teacher. I studied a number of sciences in my undergraduate education. Genetics was one of my favorite courses, so I love going down the rabbit hole with that. So
that is so, well, that makes sense now. Why the first time we talked, that we were just on the phone forever.
That's true.
My wife's like, who are you talking to?
It was late at night. We talked at least an hour, and I had to cut you off because we're a little later over here on the East Coast. We have an early bedtime, and so I was out. I don't know if you remember that, but I was out in the barn for a while. But yeah, basically looking up that color information just because I was trying to help one of my neighbors, and then found Pitpedia, and then I got to see the different pedigrees. Found some dogs kind of from Bossy Kennels, traced a lot of that back to Ace, and I saw how a lot of people were using the dog Ace, similar to the goat I was referencing earlier. And I was like, oh, I think I want to. If I would breed, I would build around this dog and pull from Adios and Victoria's Secret and piece that together, and then what would the outcross be, and started just evaluating all of that without even owning a dog or even necessarily planning on buying one. I made myself wait at least 6 months. It was supposed to be a year to save money because I wanted to get in right. I wanted to be able to go to the source of the blood. I wanted to get the highest quality because again, you can only have so many dogs. Yep. If you have goats or if you have roosters, you can have 30 acres and have 100 or hundreds of them. But with dogs, you know, now we have a small space outside. Originally, I wanted everything to be inside, so we're gonna have 5 dogs, maybe 7 max. Right. So I wanted to be able to get the highest quality that I could, and so time gave me an opportunity to set aside a little more money to make sure that wasn't a limiting factor, and then to do the research and try and foresee what the mistakes would be or the shortcomings would be, and bypass that instead of buying a dog that was only mediocre and having to work up to that in a couple generations. You can wait 6 months and do your research, avoid this line and get stuff from that line, and really save yourself 2 or 3 years of breeding to get to that point.
And yeah, the time factor is, I say the time factor is multiplied by the money factor as well.
Yeah.
You try to cheap out on something, and then you're not happy with whatever it is. And then you wasted a year sitting around looking at it. And then you're out the time, the money, the feed, the care, and the biggest part is the attachment.
Yeah.
With dogs, it's not like a goat or a chicken. You know what I mean? It's like
part of your family.
It becomes part of your family, and then what do you do then? And that's something that we're dealing with, my wife and I.
Sure.
In our yard, because we didn't intentionally buy a bully to breed, we bought them for pets. But now we're becoming breeders, so we have to draw the line because these dogs are multiplying rather quickly.
That's true, and you're never going to get rid of your first one, so it's going to have a whole bedroom to itself, but might never be a part of the breeding program.
Yeah, because you just got to keep productions, right? Because you got to get to what you're trying to create, depending on how many generations that's going to take.
Sure.
And you can't sell everything. You got to keep the best of your best in order to create even better. So, very interesting. So, as it sits right now, what are your goals with the Eternals?
Yeah, what are the goals now?
Yeah, where are you at? What are your goals? We're kind of, want to know.
I think the best way to look at it, or what I'd most like to share, is not so much goals, maybe, but shifted a little bit to like vision. This is what I was evaluating a little bit last year when I was trying to write down and look at some goals. It's like, okay, let's look even longer term and bigger picture, and let's get a vision to help orient those goals. And I started thinking about, well, for a little while, I don't think I'm going to go down this space now, but I thought about maybe getting my ABQC judge's license and learning some more that way and being able to travel and connect with more people. I love this type of thing. Thanks so much for coming and asking us to do the interview. So I love connecting with other people. I'm still relatively new in this, and so I don't pretend to be an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I have spent hundreds of hours of research and mapping out breeding. So I'm always happy to share what I have learned and what we have gone through by experience. Because like I said, I tried to wait that first year and prevent as many mistakes as possible, but you still do plenty of things you wish you had done differently. So I'm always happy to pass those experiences on.
It's kind of like an addiction, isn't it?
I'm sure everyone that's going to take the time to listen to this whole thing can relate to the hours that you lay in bed and you just imagine, what if I paired this dog with this dog? Whether you've got your phone there, whether I'm just doing it while I'm trying to fall asleep and I can just picture the pedigrees. I'm like, oh, what if I did this? Or 3 generations from now, what if I did that? 4 times Jasmine. Yeah, almost everyone who is listening to this
if you're still watching, you're like one of us.
For sure.
My name is Earl, and I suffer from American Bully Syndrome.
ABS.
Right? That's probably a real thing in our community, ABS. American Bully Syndrome. Like, you spend the time all your dogs, you get in bed, now you're thumbing through, looking at pictures, and then looking at other dogs, right? It's got to be a disorder.
Yeah, my wife can attest. Once over the last year or so, I've moved more over into this, mostly full-time. So now it's my. I mean, anyone who has dogs, it's kind of a full-time thing because you
Oh,
never get any time off. But as far as just where I was putting my productive work and time was pretty much just into the dogs now. Some of my former businesses are a little bit passive, um, but I had to pick up some new hobbies because it used to be the dogs were my hobby, and now I was just spending every waking minute only dogs from about 17 hours a day. So I had to try and find some other hobbies to help diversify my thoughts and at least give her a break for a couple hours a day. My wife is in the background, so is Earl's. For those of you watching,
Yes, they're making us behave today.
yes. Speaking of that, back to goals or a vision. So was thinking about those different things, and so I love. And again, so if you guys are watching this, have any questions, I'm happy to help. You're welcome to come and see the dogs. We can go over whatever you want. You can see the dogs. I can go over bloodlines with you. I have still a lot of pedigrees and pages memorized. We can go over structure. Again, haven't showed, definitely not a judge, even though I was thinking about it, but can definitely teach a lot of people that are starting off, what the stifle is, what does rear angulation look like, what are we talking about when we talk about back length, how short of a back is a back, or I can just send you the ABKC breed requirements. A lot of people don't know exactly how to find those, and they're super detailed, 26 pages that are detailed, this is a medium to short length of dog, and so you're measuring from the point of shoulder to the point of hip, and it'll have a diagram showing you where that is, and that should be approximately equal to the height to the withers. Well, what's the wither? It'll have a diagram with that. So lots of terms if you're really new to the dog world, that we can point you in the right direction, and I'm sure Earl can too. Anyways, happy to help, but let's get back to what I was talking about with the vision. This is what I was thinking about when I was letting myself daydream one day, thinking about goals a good year ago, is Thanksgiving Day. I like Thanksgiving. I don't know if you like Thanksgiving food. It's good. We weren't a big Christmas family, but we all love Thanksgiving. So I never watched the Macy Day Parade. I was always watching the Westminster Dog Show.
Okay.
So bullies are not a part of the AKC. For this to happen, technically they'd have to be a part. I think there'd be a lot of positives to that. That might never happen, but you'll at least get the gist of what I'm saying. Is turn it on the TV. Westminster show. Last year was a French bulldog that actually took on the title. I don't know if you saw that. But imagine if you saw an American bully trotting around the ring. They already have to be a grand champion to get there. And so it's hard enough for our XLs to get a grand champion title in ABKC. It would be even harder in the AKC. But then to go out there and to win the Westminster, the National Dog Show, I think that would be so cool. I think that would be cool for
that is a different thought process.
So many reasons. I mean, the XLs, I can name on one hand. That's not true. I can name probably on two hands, and I would miss a couple, the number of XLs that are grand champions in the ABKC. And now the AKC is even more stringent. But the reason why is, right, the standard bully is much closer to the breed standard because it was designed for the standard.
Correct.
Even more so than the pockets. Pockets, you'll have more of a bulldog influence, so you can get a little more of a high rear. You can get a little more of like a face and a head shape that's slightly different, even though it's easier to keep the mass then. The XL is harder to keep the mass. Sometimes some more mastiff features, sometimes some more pit features. So for a short-term goal, it's really good to be able to think about, is this dog good enough to grand champ? At least champ. If not every dog is going to be bred. Sometimes you have a certain dog that you're line breeding or inbreeding that you know is going to produce this look, and they might not quite embody it themselves. But at least I'm thinking a lot of us need to really start studying that breed standard and get to some shows, see what that looks like, and evaluate all of the small details that go into our dogs, from gait to, like I was talking about, back length and all these different things that XL breeders haven't always paid as much of attention to. They're more of a designer dog, and we weren't as close to the breed standard. And so a step further, to actually get out there and compete with dogs that have been around for 100 years, 150 years, the labs, the hunting dogs, the shepherds, everything that's been there, to really get to that level of not just sticking to the breed standard. Because it'd be so cool if an American bully won an out cheer for if it was a standard or a pocket, but even more cool if it was an XL.
Yes.
The dogs that we're so attached to put a couple years of our life into. I think that'd be really neat. It would show about three things: the consistency that we've been able to put into it. We've been able to get closer to the breed standard. I mean, it would have to fully embody the breed standard to be able to win a show like that. And I think third and fourthly is if we were ever to join a national registry like the AKC, I think it's done two things. I think it's both helped. It's both a sign that we've helped improve the reputation of the breed by then, and in itself being recognized by the AKC is then going to help the reputation of the breed. Like the pit bull right now,
Right.
It's not in the AKC. And so I think that would be a lot of steps forward for the breed to be more accepted generally throughout the states, and get rid of a lot of those preconceived stigmas that people have just through exposure, just through the national media, the national acceptance. And right now, if someone sees it, they're like, wow, what kind of dog is that? They don't even know what American Bully is. No. Once we get to that point, I think so many more people have experienced an American Bully. And how many people meet an American Bully in person and don't love it? Or not many. No one that's brave enough to actually come up and pet the dog has ever walked away probably not at least liking, or if not loving, that American Bully breed.
Yeah, because they're just like people who are not familiar with the breed at all. They're like, oh, that's a big pit bull. Like, oh.
Yeah. What is that? Is that a King Corso? Is that a,
right? Yeah.
All different types of things. So I think 3B, kind of the fourth thing. Then I think if we're able, my dream is not for the bullies to join the AKC. That's just kind of an example or one step that would be in that process. But if we're ever to join a national registry like the AKC, I think what it means is not that we've just become more consistent with our breeding, sticking to the breed standards, overcome some of the stigmas with our breed, and then that would help us go even further in the reputation. But I think what it's also done is, I think part of the reason bullies aren't really considered for the AKC is the habits of a lot of the bully breeders are questioned. These are backyard bred dogs. They aren't well taken care of. They aren't professional breeders. They aren't adhering to USDA standards for the breeders.
Well, what's funny is if you look at our dogs in our lane, they're probably top tier in pricing.
Yeah, definitely.
Compared to those so-called, show dogs. It's
definitely the market's there, awesome. and that's definitely nice. It helps motivate people to take extra special care of their bullies. So I love that. That's one thing I like about breeding a more expensive breed of dog, and even strain within our breed. My dogs are definitely not the cheapest, but I love knowing that whoever gets this is going to take. When I got my first dog, and it was X thousands of when
Yep.
I don't spend money very often, so if I spend that much money on something, it's going to be well taken care of. I like to think of myself as someone that would take very good care of a dog anyways. But you're making sure that those joints are on point. You're making sure they're not getting any trouble. It's definitely not running out in traffic. Everything is 100% on point with that. So I do appreciate that. But I think if we ever got to that point of national recognition and inclusion in some of these, just in the media or in spaces or in breed registries, then it would mean that the breeders and their reputation has risen to the level and standard that's expected. And a lot of people are already there, and people think that they aren't, but then there are also people that just aren't at this standard that would be required by either the AKC or by the USDA for breeders to be at. So I would love for everyone who has an American Bully to be at least at that minimum level.
That's the different vision.
Thanks.
Because our vision was, I'll refer back to, when we first started, decided to get into breeding. I love the breed. I love the temperament. I love how they look, just everything about them.
Yeah.
They're captivating, right? There's something just captivating and almost majestic, like seeing a wild animal and putting your hands on it, right? And so for me, I always say, I want to produce a dog that looks like Brock Lesnar on a leash. But be gentle and touchable, and where it's not like this thing's gonna eat you, right? But it's kind of freaky though. The first time you see these dogs, they're a very powerful breed, especially in the XL lane, and you kind of like, whoa, and then you take a moment and you get around them, you see their personality, and that's what hooks you.
Definitely.
Just a beautiful, beautiful dog. So
yeah, when you get a well-bred and a well-socialized bully, they're about the best dog you could ask for.
Okay, so at this point in your journey, right? Like for us, in our journey, we're at that first base. We know what we want to create. We know, we think we know what it's going to take to get there. I'd like to ask you, in your journey, where are you in that process?
Yeah, that's an interesting question for sure. In getting to the style of dog that we want, or the perfect dog or ideal dog, is that the question? It's interesting because I think I had a 4-generation plan mapped out of how I was going to do this, and then take this keeper to this one and take it back, or bring in. Might not know which outcross or which dog I wanted to use to line breed from, Jasmine line or something, but I had a basic plan mapped out. What I realized, the dogs are just so unpredictable. You might have a singleton that's only a boy and you're supposed to have a girl from this litter, or you might have a female all of a sudden that you need to retire because it's not going to be, she might have only had one litter and for health reasons. Obviously, we prioritize that, and so if it's going to be a risk to the female at all, we'll just, spay her and retire her. So that's what I learned is basically the best laid plans of mice and men. You get some females that we bumped into that just aren't really that fertile or aren't fertile. Might never be able to have puppies, or they might be able to have one litter, with one or two puppies, and then just.
I've seen that. And do you can you connect that with something or equate that with something?
Recently, I've been talking to my vet about a study she's doing on chronic inflammation, largely of the uterus, that will lead to systemic changes that then can lead, if caught earlier. There's been some preliminary research done on a certain anti-inflammatory being used, not an NSAID, so don't use carprofen or anything like that. That's negative to fetal health. But a different one I'd have to get to. It was just a recent study done in a very small population, I think 7 bitches that were having trouble getting pregnant. They put them on this, they were able to get pregnant and have pups. So very small sample size that they were looking into. And we do know, I don't know, I need to follow up and get back to you because I'm not sure how related that inflammation of the uterus is related to, we'll get dogs with really itchy paws or really itchy ears. Sometimes, chronic ear infections that's related to oftentimes a food sensitivity or environmental sensitivity. Whether that's, some don't like pollen or grass that much, or we take some of our girls with the more sensitive skin away from poultry-based food, or sometimes it'd be beef with bullies. I think the number one food allergy is chicken and then beef, and then third actually might be turkey, even though, is it turkey? Turkey is what a lot of people turn to avoid chicken, but I think it's the third highest allergen off the top of my head. So, long story short, I've been doing a moderate amount of research into that, but need to do a little bit more. And then another one is you can see certain lines or certain females that you can track back to that just weren't very fertile. And sometimes then their daughters or granddaughters only have a heat cycle once a year. Sometimes they're prone to really small litters between 1 and 4. Not just once where you missed it a little bit, or maybe you've done breedings back to back and it was just a small ovulation, but where you see just consistently these are small litters missing, or just reduced fertility in general. But yeah, I'm not an expert on infertile females.
I found, and this is in my belief system of growing up in a farm.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's always noticed that with the heavier, a heavier woman or female. Go ahead, laugh, guys. It's okay. With heavier females, typically we see that as an issue. The other thing, more so than
heavier, meaning built, like with dogs built bully, or you just mean heavier?
Overweight.
Yeah,
Weight.
Sure. Definitely.
And then the other one is the food, and the feed is a big one. Nutrition.
Yeah.
And so we're actually shifting to all raw.
Nice.
We're a lot of grinding. It's a lot of grinding, chicken and whatnot. And so for us, it's worth the investment of time. I know kibble is so much easier, and it's about a 4 or 5 hour process for us.
Sure. And they're using a recipe where you're mixing ground chicken with other things, or how are you?
Yeah, we got throwing in chicken, green beans, carrots, pumpkin, garlic, supplementation. We're using Nuvet.
Yeah.
So Nuvet Plus, New Joint Plus, right? We were just talking about protecting joints. And so I don't like to have my puppies too heavy.
Sure.
I feel like it, people want to oh, my dog is too much. He's 150 pounds.
For sure.
And then it's like you're ruining his joints because
Yeah.
he can't support all that weight. And I think, you could ruin the dog that way.
Definitely.
It's
yeah, definitely with the joints when they're growing, and it's not even easier on them when they're adults. I talked to her. I was alluding to one dog that had torn her ACL, and I intentionally was bulking her up to put a little more weight on her, and not as much as what you saw my dogs. They're really lean.
Yep.
Except Icon's a little bit of a pig. She might have had an extra pound or two. But even her, I wouldn't call her overweight. No, all the rest of my dogs were very lean. I keep them lean for joint health, not just as puppies, but also as adults. But the one time that I had a torn ACL, the dog I had put up, she ran super lean all the time. So I put an extra just like 5 pounds on her or something like that. She looks a lot better in photos and everything. And she wasn't even overweight. You could talk to the vet, anything, but that's when I bumped into that. So yeah, definitely for the joints and ligaments and everything, I find it keeping them lean is best. So you were talking about larger males and them having problems also.
Yep.
With natural breedings, mounting and all of that. One thing going back to, it affects males too, but especially with the females, one thing we definitely tweaked and I did a small amount of research into was phytoestrogens. And so one of the reasons we moved away from kibble, we were doing a mixture of raw. Some of our dogs get raw, some of them get kibble, some of them get mix. We're moving away from Victor just because there's, I think alfalfa would be about the 9th ingredient in there. So if you look at it on the label, there aren't a lot of phytoestrogens. Let me explain what a phytoestrogen is. It's basically a molecule that's really similar to the estrogen molecule. And so it will bind to certain things and inhibit the body from producing the same level of estrogen that it typically would. And so, of course, that can affect fertility levels, especially in females. Also can affect males, right? Because males and females have to have a certain balance of testosterone and estrogen. But phytoestrogens are something definitely to look out for. So soy, you want to limit. Basically, you want to eliminate all of these things, but you definitely don't want them in the top 5 and preferably not anywhere near the top 10 ingredients of your food. This also goes for supplements because I was feeding CF Plus, which was recommended for people that were saying, oh, if your bitch isn't cycling naturally, like every 6 months, put her on CF Plus. CF Plus, the number 1 ingredient is alfalfa, which is a phytoestrogen. It is. Yeah. Which, think of legumes. So think of soy, think of alfalfa. You can also have flaxseed, pea, so beware of pea protein. All of these things can affect us, just like we know with men when they're drinking a lot of soy milk or tofu, if you overdo it with soy, that can affect your estrogen levels. So same thing with the dogs. Look up a full list of phytoestrogens and make sure that's not in your food. It's in a lot of dog food, these alternatives, because legumes are high in protein. So they'll be in a lot of dog foods, especially grain-free dog foods. But also in supplements. You can have a lot of supplements from fish oil to dine to anything else. Make sure to check the label because it'll have soy in it if it's liquid, or it will have sometimes alfalfa in it if it's a pill as a binding agent. So the CF Plus that I was feeding was actually doing the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. And the girl I was feeding it to help bring into heat, she ended up having a singleton. That always stuck with me a little bit. I thought it was because of the frozen semen, but as I say it out loud now, I'm curious if that was related to it.
So do you get semen evaluation before you do your what are you doing, AI or
TCI? Almost always, yeah, basically all TCIs. I use Ohio State reproductive vet. They're super high tech. That's why I was referencing the research articles. They're really up to date on all of the most recent research, even stuff that hasn't been fully published or really well known nationally. They're all going through their residency program, and so doing my current vet that does most of our reproductive work. She is doing that study that's taking a biopsy of the uterus of the females that are having that reproduce naturally as a control, and then that are having issues to reproduce, to look at the width of the uterine lining, to look at these chronic inflammation problems that I was talking about.
Oh, wow.
And so she's in the middle of that study right now. Some of my last female that went in, she was able to, cycle normally, get pregnant with full litter, carry it to term on her first litter. So she became part of the control group for that study. Oh, so really? Use Ohio State, they have a lot of the top of the line evaluations. So I always trust their sperm analysis more than anyone else's. I go somewhere and get studs frozen, and it'll say 2.5 billion sperm, which is not true. That stud in particular has never been not much over 1 billion sperm. But every time I go there, it says 2.5 billion. And I know it's not right because Ohio State's machine is about $250,000, somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000, and it's counting the strains of DNA in the sperm to ensure that they're not accidentally counting bacteria or red blood cells, white blood cells, anything else that could be clouding the semen. Because most people, if you have a $25,000 machine or less, which most of us do if we're doing it in-house or using someone that's not a large facility, it's just shining light through the sperm, and then it measures how much light passes through. And so there could be a number of things that are obstructing that light from coming through. So yes, we always do semen analysis, and just for people's knowledge out there, you want at least $100 million. $100 million. That is the goal. Everyone should have $100 million to do a breeding.
We're gonna make the Mayweather production.
And if you breed bullies, you'll have 100. No, please don't say that. That's the opposite of what I want to communicate in this. 100 million for your sperm count. 100 million motile sperm. So that might say, let's say we have 150 million sperm. 67% of them are motile. You'd be right over that 100 million that you want for a minimum viable breeding dose. That was always the old school logic. I know everyone wants a billion. They always want to see their sperm count with the billion, but if you're getting an accurate count, that's what you want for a minimum. Now, I've seen litters that come with 11 plus puppies and it's 22 million sperm, something really low like that, but that's not recommended. And the most recent recommendations are really 200 million motile sperm. And so that's what I always shoot for, because I feel like that's enough to make sure we're maximizing litter size. Not just getting a pregnancy where we might only cover 3 of the 9 eggs that were released during ovulation, but with 200 million motile sperm, then I feel really good about the chances. So I'm not as much after the 1.5 billion that everyone thinks that they need, although more never hurts.
No, it certainly doesn't. Okay, which leads me to why I initially reached out to you anyway.
Yeah. $100 million.
$100 million.
I'm gonna have to get that to you next week, or I gotta move some stuff around, to be honest.
Well, yeah, you promised me $100 million in Smash, right? That was the conversation.
Oh, that's right. You were gonna pay me $100 million to buy a Smash. As a matter of fact, he really likes your wife. You can take him home if you got a check.
Right?
Just kidding, Smash.
Just hold off a few years before you cash it. So anyhow, I reached out to Cade in terms of Smash. I saw him. Very impressed by him. Again, we're new to the industry, so it's like we don't know what the etiquette is. Wanted to see this dog. We just kind of both went down the rabbit hole of talking about Smash and breedings and dogs and everything else. And so, can you tell us how you ended up with Smash?
How I ended up with Smash, he was in the UK, as many of you know that are watching. He was over with A1 Bullies and Grillina Bullies. I had developed a relationship with Paul from A1 Bullies just over the years. One of the good people helping educate people. I had never bought or done any business with him, to be honest, and he'd given me different advice. He had Sugar Daddy. He co-owned Sugar Daddy over there, which was Good Boar's brother. So when I was basing a lot of my initial program and generations on Jasmine blood. So I'd reached out to him. Probably a question like you and other people ask us, like, how much does it cost to buy a dog like that? Because, they bought him when he was 8 months or close to a year or something like that.
Yeah.
And a really exclusive dog. And so we had talked since then. So first I bought Icon, who you met today.
Mm-hmm.
She was in my top 5 females anywhere in the world. And then he was having to transition away from bullies, not at all because of the market or any of the stuff that's going on now, but just because of life, how that goes for some people. So he's transitioning away from the XLs. So Icon came over here, and then when it got to the point that he realized that he wasn't going to be able to keep and advertise Smash to the extent that he wanted to be able to, he had reached out to me. And I should not have bought any more dogs. I probably shouldn't have even bought Icon, as my wife can attest. But I couldn't really resist with her, and she filled a good hole. Fully health tested. I was really working on hip and elbow health. She was just 100% health tested. Great temperament, as you met, and just such a quality female. I couldn't turn her down. And she fit in well. And then Smash was definitely way over the top. We bought more dogs than we needed to, but who could turn down an opportunity like that to buy him, especially when he was just starting his breeding career? I committed to buy him before he even had any puppies. Wow. So probably paid too much for a dog that didn't even have productions on the ground yet. But if you've been following him, or as other people have been, you can tell that his productions are definitely top notch. So the 3 hours that had already gone into studying his, I had his pedigree memorized back 6 generations, and I had probably looked back on Pickpedia close to 10 generations just when my buddy Paul owned him, before I even thought about buying. I knew that he had bought him from Gatorhead before it was announced to the world, so I had already studied it all the way out. Was planning to breed him to Majesty, and then that was who I didn't do it for her first breeding, but kind of her second one, who I first wanted to take icon to as well, even before I had gotten to the point of knowing that Smash might be for sale. So, yeah, that's how I ended up with them.
Wow. That is a crazy story. So you already were researching him. He was not for sale.
No, not for sale. And I probably, Paul is super smart and studies all the genetics, but I'm pretty sure I would have known if you had to quote however many generations back in the pedigree you could go. I'm sure before he was even for sale, I'm sure that I knew more than anyone else, except maybe Renee. Renee is the one that actually bred him and has a lot of her blood in there. But as far as anyone else except her, I'm sure I would have known more than his current breeders. Okay. His current owners, excuse me.
So when you get this call,
sure,
about Smash, tell me what you're feeling, what your mindset's at. Like,
I told him no. I'm pretty sure. I said I can't. I promised my wife I got Icon, and that we made a deal that it was like it. We were pretty much full capacity. I'd already hit my initial budget that I was supposed to. I'm sure I'd already gone past that once I did the facilities and stuff of what I'd set aside for the dogs. But we made a deal that this would be the last one was getting Icon, and so and really, and she had hinted like, oh, we shouldn't get any more probably after I got on 3. But this was like an actual thing that we said like, okay, this you can do this, but you have to promise me. And I'm a man of my word, and I love my wife. She's so supportive. But has about 3 other different jobs and businesses going on. So when Paul first asked me, I can't remember what went through my mind. Probably anyone that likes Smash, what would go through their mind of this is an amazing opportunity. But I told him no, just because I knew it wasn't a good situation for us right then.
Wow. So you told him no initially. So then what happens from there?
I am vague on the steps in between there. It wasn't even me. It wasn't even me working on my wife. I think I did tell her like, "Hey, you'd be proud of me." Paul asked about. I had already mentioned Smash. I don't know if she knew him that well or not, but I was thinking about bringing him to 2 different of my girls at that point. I was like, "You'd be proud of me." They offered for me to buy one of my favorite dogs. Because this did happen before. This happened with Secret. I don't know if you know Bossy's Secret. On Bossy's Tetra for a while. Dogs I wasn't planning on buying, but I was like, these are legends. You can't pass this up. You can't pass up this opportunity. Thankfully, both of those were before we were married. So it was just my money at that point. I was doing what I wanted. I said, you'd be proud of me. I had one of my favorite dogs offered to me, and I said no. And I'm fuzzy on how it turned around. I think Paul wanted him to go to a really good home that would not just take good care of him, but like use him well, promote him well, do the business, and help the breed. And so I think they just kind of sat on him for a while. They bred him a little bit in the UK, and we had some things changing, and I was even shifting. We skipped a couple breedings intentionally, 1 or 2 due to health. Part of it, we weren't wanting to oversaturate the market, and then 1 or 2 of the breeds we tried to do last year, meaning 2022, didn't take. And so I never bought any males. It was never in my plan to buy any males. I was going to produce my own. So you met Oath, you met a few other studs out there that are up and coming that I produced, which was always the goal. And then we had just had a lot of our initial, Oath was a singleton, so we didn't have any other males in that. We had a partnership breeding that we did that was really, really great. That created Noodle's mom. But we ended up with no males off of that, and we had to retire Secret early, and so we just didn't get any males. And I think we wanted to shift a little more into the stud service because I get to meet more people like you. I get to meet more kennels. You get to network with more people and have, in some ways, I don't want to say you have your finger slightly involved in a larger swath of the bowling community. I was going to say you get to be more involved in the bowling community, which isn't true, because obviously everyone whelping their puppies is super involved in making a huge difference there. But I just felt like it created a better opportunity. And especially with the other businesses that we had going on and kind of jobs and paths that you had in life, we didn't want to be whelping a litter every month or every 2 months because you're just shut off to the rest of the world. And so going more the stud line allowed us to just stick with those 2 litters a year that we wanted to do, but to be actively involved in lots of different productions.
Very nice.
Thanks.
But that still doesn't cover how you got them. You told your wife no.
No, we eventually. I didn't even work on her or wear her down. We eventually just. I felt like it was a good decision for us. Later on, after multiple weeks, I was like, hey, I had this weird kind of feeling. Sometimes you listen to kind of like your gut or your instincts. That this would be a good thing. What do you think? Just think it over and let me know what you're thinking. I'm totally fine with not, because this was not the plan.
Right,
We didn't have extra money sitting aside for this. Not a cheap dog. But I had an idea of like, oh, this is how we could afford it, and I think it would be helpful for us long term. Just think about it and let me know. And she kind of had that same feeling. I think later out, I found out that she acquiesced to the request because she knew it would make me happy. But I only wanted to do it if we were both in full agreement on that. So she came back and thought it was a good idea, and we had kind of take some time to move some stuff around, replan some things, and Paul and Steve were gracious with us. And so yeah, Smash started his breeding career over there. They waited on us to get everything together. The bank lost half of our wire for about 6 weeks, so we ended up having to miss what was supposed to be Smash's first breeding here. Shout out to Delvin for being very patient with that. I've got to send him some customers because he's a very gracious and cool dude and has a good female that's going to Smash. So we're going to line up some customers for you through this podcast.
There you go.
Miss some of the beginning of what was supposed to be his breedings here. We had a small litter with Icon because we had to last minute ship over frozen semen because he hadn't gotten over yet. Just because the money didn't exist anymore. No one knew. My bank didn't know where it was. He didn't have it. His bank didn't know where it was. So that took at least 6 weeks to uncover.
Good Lord.
So yeah, that's how we got there.
Well, what an interesting and amazing story, because how he got here is how we got here. That's why I'm like, okay, how do you get a dog like Smash, right?
Sure.
And as a person that's a fan of Smash and a fan of your program, that's why we drove 6 hours to see you and see him and speak with you guys. And so I was curious of the story of how you ended up with him, how he got on your yard, and was that a planned acquisition? Was that
Sure.
So in my mind, I'm like, how did that? Has it always been, or is it just one of those things that just
that's
happenstance,
some of the best opportunities fit in with the vision of kind of the lines and the line breeding I wanted to do, but just were offered to me out of the blue, whether it was Bossie's Tetra, who was Whopper's mom, who was a legendary female and producer. We unfortunately only got to do one breeding with her, and that was out at on a co-home situation at that time, so we didn't end up with too many dogs from that. But just situations like that just kind of was a phone call that rang into my line randomly. Wasn't trying to push and make it happen. I had my whole vision drawn out, and then those opportunities came up on their own. And through good partners and connections.
Yeah, that's key, because when you meet more good people, it just opportunities occur, right, and happen, and it just that energy just all flows to me.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing. We thought we were capped at dogs. Now we're bringing that Brazilian girl here in December.
Yeah, I saw her. She's so nice. What's her name again?
Fortuna.
Fortuna. That's right.
Yeah.
Que buen fortuna.
Yeah, and I was.
What good fortune.
What are we? Yeah, her name is Fortune, translation in English, and we were capped out at dogs too. We're like, I was like, okay, we're good now. We're good now. And then this opportunity came, and I looked at this dog. I'm like, it's something different, right? It's part of that creativity, and that, to me, breeding, there's a creative energy that it's required.
Definitely.
Because you could just breed whatever, same thing. But in order to innovate and create, you gotta have that creativity that, and for me, that's why, like, we spent so much time building our kennel. For me, I can't concentrate at work if my desk is messy. Like, I'm the type of person that needs to sit down, clear the desk, wipe it down. Let me find my creativeness, let me get in my zone of work. Otherwise, I'm trying to work, and everything else around it is distracting me, and so I'm not giving my best creative work. And so, as a person, that's how I operate.
Sure.
That's, kind of that's why I wanted to hear that story, and like how we are importing this girl over here, and I believe she's going to bring a lot of substance. You know, and we mix with some very consistent American blood. We're going to
Definitely
create that new tier, that next generation of wild dogs.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the way to go. I mean, one thing I guess I haven't shared with too many people. I don't know if it's a secret or I just haven't proven it yet. But researching a lot of the old Dogs Pedigree before I was even thinking about buying American Bullies, I was trying to see how dogs were bred, and so went back a dozen generations and all of it. I feel like a really good balance is when you have 3 lines that are pretty tightly bred, like 3 lines that are line bred, and then you'll have 1 line of an outcross. So meaning what happens is you take a very tightly line bred dog to a dog that comes, that was bred half from that line and then half from an outcross. And I've been looking for a really long time. What am I going to do for an outcross? What am I going to do for an outcross? I had some ideas in the beginning from, ICK to Jug Blood and Old Kimbo Blood. And I like how that mixes with some of the stuff I have. But I think the Brazilian route, I think there are 2 routes. The one route I'll probably go next. And then the other one is definitely the Brazilian route is a wonderful way to go to complement. That complements what we have, bringing in some of those strengths of substance and a thicker rib cage and just really tight skin to some of the more correct and pretty dogs that we have. Really pretty faces we have here, especially from Bossy Cat did a great job of that, of like just having that look. You can see the dog, like you were looking at Majesty and just say that's such a pretty good. To Oath, they just have that certain face shape and just look even in their eyes. And so I think mixing some of that with the substance and muscle that the Brazilian dog brings is
that's kind of like how we got connected with Rhea and some Kennels.
Sure.
I looked at Lily, and then I looked at Klaus, and I was like, that's like for me at that point. And my wife actually found him.
Nice.
And so, you go down the rabbit hole of Lily, Petra, Zion, and then you look at Klaus and you're like, man, that's a hyper type of a dog, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, and the thing is, we didn't even want a male off that litter. I wanted a female. I wanted a female that looked like Klaus. We ended up with 2. We're supposed to get 1. So our fawn girl looks like Klaus, and our chocolate tri-girl looks like Lily. Mm-hmm. And how do you pick between the 2? Got to take them both. It's like, here we go, right? Buy more dogs. If you had all infinite space and money, you'd buy almost every dog you got over. You'd be like, yeah, I'll take 2 of those. I'll take 3 of those. Like, well, we're very happy with our acquisitions, and I believe when we get to that point, these productions are really going to show. The creative process of, like you said, going down, writing things down, and be like, okay, you're like the mad scientist back there, right? So, okay, well, understanding the goals of the Eternals. And we definitely are interested in collaborating and working with you guys. We love the blood you have on your yard.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
I think it's going to complement well because we're definitely in the lab too trying to create.
Yeah.
And there's just certain dogs, certain programs that we are a fan of.
For sure.
And so, well, now I kind of understand your flavor of what you like. Can you name off a couple males you're a fan of?
One I saw that's up and coming that just is definitely a wild dog is Zippo at Create Greater Kennels. Definitely like him. Reminds me a lot of Smash. He was the one I looked at and I thought, wow, he might take Smash's spot. Okay. This summer, I mean, Smash was really hot when he first came over in the spring. Was kind of for a second when he first landed in the U.S. maybe the most popular Stugger dog, but at least one of them, one of the flavors of the summer. Tried to breed him in a way and slow down his lock-ins in a way that's not just going to be a flash in the pan. But I don't know if you've been around long enough, but dogs definitely come in and out pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Part of that, which I think is bad, we don't want to just breed for fads or what's in vogue or in style. Thankfully, a lot of us have gotten away from breeding for color, and now we're focused on substance.
Yes.
So I'm thankful for that. But another part that's a good thing is in a generation, it's a young breed. It's 20 years old, 30 years old, and so in one generation, which is just a year, maybe 2 years, you can make such great strides. And so I think that's a great thing. So I think a dog that's similar to my type, because a lot of ways he looks like Smash. I probably even like maybe his head or his head shape a little bit better is Zippo. Beautiful dog, that bone and that spread, You can see from the dogs I have out there, that's kind of my type. It's the big.
Oh, yeah.
I want to breed for the breed standard, but the 2 things I'm really a sucker for is that widespread and heavy bone.
Oh, big time.
That'll get me every time. So That's actually why I base a lot of my art on Jasmine. I don't know if you remember Boss's Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Skipping ahead, I guess, to favorite females now, but she just was, clean front, super wide front, just the shape of her chest, and the heavy bone, too, because you got to have the bone to match.
Of course, yep.
But other studs, I don't know if we want to go into other studs.
Yeah, if you want to just touch on a few dogs that is just cat. It's just more of like what catches your eye, right?
Yeah. What catches my eye? For a long time, my favorite stud that I'd seen in person was Good Bar. Loved Good Bar, even in person. I know a lot of people haven't seen him. That definitely was a big stud that I loved. Have not seen Whopper, but I love the way that he produces. Have 2 Whopper offspring out there.
Yeah, I want to see Whopper.
He was off my girl Tetra, and he just produced so consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even more so. Whopper just produces so consistently with that spread and the heavy bone and the spread again. Other dogs that I really liked this year, both kind of what they produced in the past, their offspring are growing up, and just how they look as dogs. 2 very different dogs were Enzo and Jumanji.
Enzo, yep. Jumanji, definitely.
I remember when I was buying Smash, I was like, the only 2 other dogs I think I would consider, if I got just to buy one, the only 2 other ones that I would consider besides Smash would be Enzo and Jumanji.
So
just because they're still...
Jumanji right there.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time you bought Smash, if your option was Enzo, Smash, or Jumanji, which one would you have bought?
They weren't for sale, so I can't say unbiasedly. I'm afraid if I evaluate it now, I might be biased. But at the time, those were the 2 other dogs that would have given me pause. If they were like, you can have Smash or Good Bar, who had been a favorite of mine, he had just gotten to the point in his career where I would have gone with Smash.
Right. Okay.
Also, a little more of a compact dog than Good Bar. I was moving more that way. I needed a dog really. I wanted something right at 21 inches, maybe 21 and a half, but Smash was right at 21 inches. Brought even the pedigree. He was bringing in a lot of outcross. If you go back on Smash's dam side in particular, you're going to see a lot of Jug. You're going to see 8 times Comet. You're going to see, throughout his pedigree, 25 times King Lion. Do you know King Lion? He would be Liger's dad, and then 13 times King Lion's sister, multiple times Bronx, and then Kukui. When I started Linebreeding Ace, I wanted mostly through Adios, a little bit through Victoria, and then the 3rd strain I was maybe going to grab was a little bit of Kukui. And I didn't have any of that in my yard. So that's from Top Dogs, Ace Son. So he brought in a lot of the line breeding that I wanted to through Jasmine. He was two times Jasmine, because he's Whopper, who goes to Tetra and Jasmine, over Good Bar. And so he just brought in all of the blood that I wanted. So I might have gone Smash, to be honest. But I knew, and soon will be, that I wanted to incorporate Jumanji in my yard, too. I might have taken Jumanji. That would have been a tough one. Yeah, but again,
you know what I mean? Like, that's a tough...
Jumanji had some good offspring already on the ground, up and comers, and so since Smash was kind of new and like a fresh palette, that would have been a tough one. But shout out to Enzo too. I like him and like what he has. He's a freak. I mean, for a dog that tall, that's why I said he's very different than Jumanji. In some ways, built the same. In some ways, Enzo's built like a pocket. But to have a dog that's that big, close to 23 inches, probably maybe 155, 160 pounds, is very unique. And he just in the last year really started producing these super correct, muscled up, defined females in particular, but also some really nice males too. So shout out to all those dogs. And Zippo for an up and comer. And I'm sure I'm forgetting one that I should shout out as well. If it comes to mind, I'll shout him out.
Okay, cool. Anything you don't like about the current state of the industry?
I don't like to focus on the negative. And I'm not saying you are through this question. Very valid question. I think it takes me back to kind of that vision of not the bullies joining the AKC, but just what that would entail as far as a level of professionalism, a level of record keeping, a level of treating our customers, a level of treating our dogs. That would be really beneficial. But the reason I like not to be negative is just in life in general, but a lot of people start talking negative about the bully world, and I don't think that's the best way to improve. I think we can look at what we could become and just strive towards that. Because in reality, I've met more... There are all types of people in the world. There are all types of people in the bully world. But when I really take the time to think about it, I've met much more good people, such as yourself, great people, even people that I consider friends now that I've met through the dogs, than I have as far as negative people or people that you would critique.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that, putting me on that list.
Well, we'll see. We still got a couple hours to evaluate.
Kind of, okay. For a young and new breeder like myself,
Hmm.
if you can give me 3 pieces of advice that can really help me in my program.
Sure. For a new breeder in general, or for you in particular?
No, just in general.
In general, I might leave one of them back to you in particular, but we've already had some conversations
Yes.
where I know you already know these things, or there are things that I've already shared with you. But in general, we'll go with take your time in the beginning. Do so much research. I tell everyone, wait at least a year. You know about American Bullies. You want American Bully. If you want to breed, if you want a pet, also wait a while and do your research to make sure you're getting it from the right spot. Because a well-bred, health tested, and socialized American Bully is about the best pet that you can get, in my opinion. So take your time with that as well. Do your research, but especially if you're breeding, wait at least a year. I mean, a couple of years would probably be ideal, but we aren't the most patient.
No.
I might have been a little less than a year before buying my first one, but wait at least a year so you can save the amount of money that it requires. Because you shouldn't be expecting to get into the bully world, even if you're getting one dog with thousands of dollars. You can't. To get the facilities, to have enough money saved for the nutrition, the vet bills, the food, until that dog gets old enough to breed, and maybe you can recoup some of that. It's not thousands of dollars, it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
To buy a dog that's good enough for a foundation dog to do those things. So take your time, do that research, and save as much money as possible to start your kennel at a level that once you're 2 years down the road and looking back, like you and I, you'd be like, oh, I don't even know if I should breed that dog that I bought 2 years ago once it's old enough to breed. And if I was buying another dog today, I love them to death, but I wouldn't buy that dog. So take your time so that once you so after you wait a year or 2 years further down the road, you're going to look at that dog and say, I'm so glad I got that exact dog for that exact reason. And it's the perfect foundation for my future. So take your time, do your research, look at pedigrees on Pitpedia. I mean, that is generations of research of what has come before you, and you can see how people are utilizing line breeding, how people are utilizing outcrossing. Every once in a while, there's some stuff on there that's not 100% accurate, but 95% of it is, and you can learn so much just from your computer or your smartphone with Google. Take your time, save money, do your research, and travel, just like we were talking about before. Get out, meet people, connect with people.
That's exactly why we were inspired to do this.
Definitely. See the dogs in person. See how they move. Your style of dog might change. At first, you might like the taller dogs. You might like the more athletic dogs. Then you might decide you might like the bullier dogs. You can tell that in person much more than you can on pictures. One of my friends, he doesn't want to breed dogs at all. He lives out in California. He's like, oh, I just want a pit bull. I want a pit bull. I like that old school style. I was going to hook him up with an old school breeder. He saw my dogs in person. He's like, wow, they're beautiful. He thought they were really like bulldog looking. People that are attracted to the pit bull aesthetic don't always love like the American bulldog or old English bulldog type aesthetic. And he was seeing my dogs, how powerful they looked on the photos and maybe intimidating for his family. He met them in person. He said, oh, your dogs are great. I don't know why I was ever, shooting for a different style of dog. So visit dogs in person. Save as much money as you can to start out right so you don't have to start over 2 years down the road, and then do as much research as you can through talking to people, through Pitpedia, and through, there's a good book too. I have it upstairs in my office. It is called, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to give you a link to that book. It's really, it doesn't look at breeding American Bullies, but more AKC style. The author was the #1 breeder of Norwegian elk hounds, and I think produced the second most AKC champions ever across all breeds, or across all across all working breeds, something like that. I'll give you the title of that book in a minute. It's going to come back to me. The Art of, It's really good. You can read about a lot of things. It broaches the black hole theory. A lot of people message me. They know I know genetics. They're like, what is the black hole theory? It's sort of not scientifically based. It's sort of scientifically based on the X chromosome, which doesn't really carry any extra information, but a lot of breeders who have bred any type of animal know how much impact the female has on the offspring and how important they are. And so it touches some of that. It is called, no, it's not The Art. It's Born to Win by Patricia Craig. I should order you a copy of this off Amazon and send it to you for making the drive out here. Covers a lot of different things. So
awesome. That looks like some good reading there. What is for myself, when I reached out to you, I went through Instagram, I believe, right?
Yes.
Is that your preferred method of communication?
Preferred method of communication. That is the best way to interact with me about the dogs, for sure. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is my phone number is on there on my Instagram account or on my website. Website is the-eternals.com. So make sure you have the dash in there, the-eternals.com, and then that'll link to everything else. Or you can find me on Instagram. Lots of underscores. It's the__eternals_. There's a bunch of Marvel movies now called The Eternals, which came out right. I never read the comics. I like Marvel, but I've never read the comics, so I named my kennel that just because we all the names of our dogs are kind of like eternal attributes, whether it's majesty or whether it's oath. These different things that are eternal, and so I like that name of the kennel, and accidentally knocked off Marvel. So
okay, I'm going to ask you one more thing before we wrap. Tell us more about Noodle.
More about Noodle. That is great. I don't know if you want to know about his pedigree, his personality, or how we created.
Well, first of all, I'm asking as a fan. I saw Noodle out there, and I was like, "Wow, what?" You just posted him on Insta, right?
Yeah.
And when we were driving, I'm like, "Man, I can't wait to see this dog."
I just this last week put out some updates as what you guys would know him as Air, H-E-I-R. Bankroll's Air. Shout out to Bankroll, who's been a really good partner through that whole process. My wife affectionately, I could not come up with a name for him, couldn't land on anything, so she affectionately named him Noodles. Noodles, plural. He doesn't look like a noodle, he's a little bit thicker.
He definitely doesn't look like it.
But yeah, I'll talk about him. He's one of our first, or well, he would have been our first second generation production. So we bred Tetra, who I mentioned before. We just did one breeding with her, to Mowgli. Mowgli's only been used about 2 or 3 times. I understand why. He's not everybody's type. People will say they're this and that about him, but 1, he's a great producer. 2, he brought in both the outcross that we needed and the line breed that we did. He was a grandson of Jasmine. There are only like 3 sons of Jasmine, and we'd already been using those to a certain extent. Tetra was off of one of those litters, sister to Champion King that we were talking about before. Mowgli, that we bred her to, his mom was off of the Wonka and Tetra breeding. Then bred to Buddha, which is bringing back in audio, so line breeding, but then Buddha's mom is total outcross, has a lot of like Johnson Bulldog and different stuff in her. So it really created a nice litter for us. Super consistent because we were doing 2 times Jasmine up front. Something that you can call the bracket method. There was a man made called William Brackett. His surname was Brackett, and he loved to line breed by taking the daughter of one female or of one particular dog and bringing it to a grandson on the other side. This was also kind of based on the X factor of the black hole theory, that the X chromosomes carry a lot of weight, and he was lining up the best that he could to a famous female like Bossy's Jasmine, bring down the X chromosome from her to those offspring, and in the females to bring down 2 of them. So we kept the female off of that breeding, and Bankroll Bullies made us an offer that we couldn't refuse. They were other great people, so shout out to them. So she went out with them, but I was able to pick stud on the first breeding. I was able to get some pupbacks off of them, and they're really great people. Take a mate, Ray, the Azzer, takes the best care of his dogs of anyone. You know, he's got multiple queen-size beds just so the dogs can sleep with him, and the ones that can't fit on the bed have their own queen-size mattress to sleep on. And Jay does a good job over there running the program and the social media. So we were able to put together that breeding beginning of last year, or really the end of the year before that. They were born in January of 2023, and so he was our keeper off of that. And that was taking Tetra Jr. 2 times Jasmine up front, then to Behemoth, who then was bringing back the Jasmine and Wonka breeding through Good Bar. Again, one of the most famous and best dogs off of that.
Of course, yes.
Obviously, some more outcross with Axel. Axel brings in some really unique things. Son of Good Bar, probably, I don't know, is he the most famous son of Good Bar at this point? He's at least the top 3. But brings in a really unique pedigree on his mom's side. And then that was taken to Lily. So Behemoth's dad is Axel. Behemoth's mom is Lily, who is Jumanji's mom. And she throws just a really great reeler, really consistent litters, throws especially really good males that then go and produce really well. So we were able to take Tetra Jr. to Behemoth, and that's where Noodles came from. He was our pup back from that. I was really proud of him. We've been, working on that particular dog for a couple years. And
I cannot believe he's only 8 months.
Yeah. He's about to be 9 months. He's very, very close to 9 months. So
still, my gosh.
Yeah. I used to call him Smash Junior because I still wasn't sure if I was going to keep the name Air. So some people would refer to him as Smash Junior, and you can probably see why. I don't know if everyone saw it in the beginning. They might have thought it was a stretch, but
Man, that boy is something special. I can't wait to see him around that 2-year mark
thanks.
and just fully mature. Oh wow, I'm excited for that boy.
Oh, thank you so much.
You
I
know.
really appreciate it. Yeah, I think he's going to produce really well. I thought Smash would produce really well based on his pedigree. If my concepts are correct, then I think Air or Noodles will produce really, really well. He's 6 times adios, 3 times Jasmine, all relatively up front, with just enough outcross in there to lower the COI into, which is coefficient of inbreeding, into what I thought was definitely a safe level, but we're gonna have as much of the adios and Jasmine blood in there that I wanted to give a really consistent outcome. And then I was really lucky with him because I was able to. We had enough outcross blood in there that not every puppy looked the same. The Mowgli and Tetra breeding, the pups were super consistent and really similar. The Behemoth and Tetra Junior breeding, they were really consistent in quality, but you had very distinct types. And with Air, I was able to get just the type I wanted. There were little things I would change and adjust on him, but as far as just that muscle definition, the big shoulder, the wide spread, not too tall, but he's probably going to be a little taller than Smash, right in that 22-inch or just over that range. He's just exactly the type we were going for, so I felt really fortunate with that.
Well, I like the type we were going for.
Thanks so much.
I saw him on Insta, and then I was like, I see Smash, and I'm like, amazing, guys. I can't speak enough about this dog being at 8 months. And as a young, inspiring breeder, listening to you and seeing the dogs on your yard, that's what inspires me. That's what keeps me up at night to be creative, to innovate, and look at what I have. How did he make that? I'd like to make something like that, right?
Sure.
It's kind of that's how we got to get into this lane to begin with.
Yeah.
And so with that said, Cade, thank you very much for having us, for allowing us on your yard to meet your dogs. We're super excited for what you got coming up. Super excited to collaborate and work with you as well.
Sure.
And gosh, I can't wait till we start producing and mix some of your blood in with what we got going on.
Oh, thanks so much, Earl. It was a pleasure. Completely, I feel honored for you making the long drive over here. Appreciated all of our time, taking the time to set this up. It was definitely an honor.
Okay, guys, this is another episode of Breeder Series with Cade from the Eternals. Tap in with Cade. He's got some amazing dogs. We'll check you out on the next one.